Hey friends, today I'm going to show you 2 ways to propagate your string of pearls. Let's go. First thing you're going to want for this little project is a well-draining pot of some sort. I'm repurposing a little takeout container. I've drilled some holes into the bottom. It's just deep enough to establish some good roots, but it's also wide enough so that I can coil the pearls around it as they grow to establish a better root system and a fuller plant in the long run. Second thing you're going to want is some well-draining soil. I have my own mix here. It's just a bunch of soil, some perlite, actually a lot of perlite, and some bark chunks. Probably some worm casings in there, and maybe a few chunks of horticultural charcoal. This will work just fine because you want a little bit of soil to retain a little bit of moisture, but you also want all that perlite for good drainage because these don't want to be wet. Okay, for the next step, you're going to take your string of pearls and you're going to take your little fancy pot. Now, if you've got a good trail going on, just very gently take them and take your little pot of substrate and plop it right underneath like that. What you'll want to do from there is just make sure that you keep the top soil moist, and all of those strands are going to root themselves into the substrate, and the plant will continue to grow. So once they're rooted, and if you have a clear pot, you'll have the benefit of seeing the roots form and all that, but you'll know because you'll be able to give them a tug and they're not going to move. But leave it for about 2 weeks. Make sure you keep the top of the soil a little bit moist so that the roots can grow. And then you'll be able to just cut from here with your scissors or whatever. And this will be a whole separate plant, and this will continue to grow. The other method that I'm going to show you. Now, if you don't want to get drastic and take off a whole section, and all you want to do is give your plant just a little trim, just make a couple cuts like that. Nothing too crazy. I wanted to give my plant just a little trim this time. I didn't want to get too wild. But as you can see, it's getting a little bit out of control. So I'm going to take just a couple strands. Oh, that one's already got a little bit of an aerial root started, so that's good. You see this little nub right there? That wants to be a root, so that's awesome to start with. But all you need is a couple bare ends. From here, what you're gonna do, take your strands, any strand, whichever strand you want. And I'm just gonna pluck off that little nub. That's kind of how he wants to naturally coil. Okay, fine. Because at least I know that he's going to start like just growing around the pot. So I'm alright with that. I want his little stem to be buried. The root already, we're going to take him, take off 2 little nubs, stick it, bury it in the soil. Boom. I wanted to coil them, but they don't really want to coil, and that's fine. Just a little bit, just enough to cover it, put a little bit of moisture down on it. See some of these bare stems? Don't hesitate to cover them. They'll root. It'll look a little bit dirty for a couple weeks, but you know what? It all settles. Do you know how I know? Because I'll show you my first set of props. To help settle, I'm going to spray the top, because right now we don't need the whole substrate to be soaked. We want the top to be thoroughly soaked though. Don't be afraid to be a little top heavy with the squirts up here. Like I said, I'll set these in front of a fan to make sure they're dry before I put them in their spot, because you really don't want to leave your pearls wet. And from time to time, come just try to get that as nice and close to the soil as you can, because roots will form and grow down as your soil is wet. What roots do is they grow towards moisture. Doesn't matter if they're a little bit above ground. Just a few days start. Keep an eye on it. Some people say to cover it. I wouldn't. I don't think these do good with no airflow and tons of humidity. So, like I said, I'm going to set this in front of a fan so the pearls themselves dry. And then I'm going to set it in its new home. But in a couple weeks, you're going to end up with something that looks like this. This is my first set of rooted cuttings, and it's all starting to grow around and spiral. And like I said, it started with just 3 random lines. So you don't got to get fancy. You don't got to get crazy. Well, I made a hell of a mess, but this is the second one. I literally just didn't even bother trying to be fancy. I just laid a few strands across the soil, as you can see. Buried the ends, sprayed it down, bing bang boom. It's ready to grow roots now and sit in its new home. Well guys, there you have it. Nice and easy how to propagate your string of pearls. If you liked the video, like and subscribe, and I'll catch you next time.